Yeah, what is up, people? Hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the Esports Rewind podcast. Hello, Zane.
Hello, Jakey boy. You know what? One of these weeks, I'm gonna have to open up with my own psychotic,
People will be so
scream.
surprised.
You're like mild mannered Zan out here, oh.
The most reserved guy I know. But anyway, we hope you guys are all doing well as per usual. Welcome back to the podcast, breaking down, a few of the craziest stories we have seen in the past week. Zan, anything to tell the people before we get rolling?
You know what? As always, thank you all for tuning in. If you'd like to support the channel, hey, maybe throw a subscription our way. It keeps you in touch with what the latest content we're posting, and it really does help support us a ton, believe it or not. So please subscribe if you enjoy it. Aside from that, though, if you want to check out the podcast on iTunes or Spotify, we're on the Prediction Network, so by all means, check it out.
Yeah, but besides all that, guys, let's get it rolling. Here we go. And Xanafer, I think this past week, man, we're finally entering the side of esports that I'm really excited to possibly touch more on in the future. That's going to be bringing the big wigs, the CEOs, the top names, down into the drama, not necessarily controversy, but the beef side of things. When it comes time for traditional sports, we certainly see, owners or coaches, I would say more rarely than the players being involved.
Yeah, you don't see direct engagement ever before between the heads of Lakers and the Knicks.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
And if you do, obviously it's in the news. I'm very excited as we slowly try and enter that side of things, especially us being more of a news show. I'm really excited to see where that takes a turn and how that can differ, but also kind of correlate with what we see in traditional sports out there. This past week, talking a lot about G2 CEO Ocelote taking on the world. And let me tell you, man, I'm just super excited to kind of talk about personalities. A guy like Ocelote.
I hear that. I love that about esports, that we have these strong personalities at the helm of our organizations like this.
Oh, yeah. And it's not a bad thing, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, even a guy...
It's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Take it lightly because, obviously when we talk about... I think we're going to talk about big personalities. FaZe Banks has a gigantic personality and certainly double-edged, right? Great things, maybe some...
For every excellent announcement, there's a hotel room or two.
Yeah, but despite all of that, it seems like no one really faults him too much for it, and they greatly enjoy still digesting that kind of side of things and seeing these CEOs, these owners, these investors, whoever it might be, top names of brands and organizations, saying some pretty crazy things. To break down G2 Ocelote this past week alone, not only had Nadeshot apparently blocked G2 on Twitter, and then we actually had Ocelote subquote that tweet or quote that tweet, whatever you want to call, say LMAO. He later replied saying big W for the boys. And then we actually dove back in that for a video, finding out that G2 social media and Nadeshot had apparently been sending him some things and involving him in their media a lot more than I thought. And then, of course, I brought up the moment where Ocelote and G2, other organizations, made fun of the 100 Thieves merch drop. And so you finally realize that there are certainly dips and dives behind the scenes that we had not really, seen too much of that maybe led to that blocking.
Somebody didn't invite somebody else to a party, and now people's feelings are hurt, and now they're on Twitter being like, oh.
But Ocelote was not done, so that was a great little beef back and forth there. We'll see where that goes. Then he'd actually had a pinned tweet for quite some time in his profile involving, I think it was Fnatic and Liquid, also 100 Thieves. Just jokes, right?
Yeah, the shit talk one, the general one.
It was jokes and jabs. And later on, just this past week, in a reply to that, someone asked about, do you have a rivalry with FaZe Clan? He just goes, no, FaZe effing sucks. They're not even in the same esports realm as G2. And it's just it's these things where, he's joking, he's jabbing, he's bantering, but it's just so funny because if this happened in sports, ESPN's talking about it. So that's my mindset.
This would be the story for weeks. For 3 or 4 weeks. In esports, it's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's a Tuesday, and then by Wednesday, people are like, well, I mean, yeah, okay, I guess.
Yeah, and it's so awesome because, I really do enjoy Ocelote. I enjoy what he's doing. I enjoy him really kind of of course, it's his personality, right? But he's owning up to it all the more and just kind of saying these kind of things out of nowhere, dropping it. It's not even garnering too much traction on Twitter.
Yeah, it really didn't. The tweet of him just talking shit was got a little bit of engagement, but nothing crazy.
Yeah, I know people get annoyed when I go back on this. I always imagine what if Ninja said G2 effing sucks, or what if Nadeshot said FaZe Clan effing sucks? It would be definitely up there, I would say, for a headline. So when it comes time for Ocelote knocking on a lot of top orgs out there, we love to break it down, guys. If anything else happens in the future and this beef does continue, I'm sure you guys will hear more about it.
All right, Jake, one of my favorite things to do on the podcast is to bring up a story that's kind of a little bit out of left field. You know, something you would not expect that most people probably have not heard of this week in gaming and esports news. Because, you know, maybe it slipped under the radar. But this week, I have an announcement from the United States Food and Drug Administration.
Jesus, you somehow bring in all these oddball stories. Just continue. I'm not even going to...
Okay, so you know how recently in the UK, there was a discussion about whether or not video gaming is addicting.
Yes.
And how that might affect younger people throughout their lives, really. And now the FDA in the US has announced that they have their very first approved video game for medical treatment.
Ooh. Okay, so this is the United States. I don't want to get these...
Food and Drug Administration.
Food and Drug Administration. FDA is a fairly well-known...
Yeah. That's the branch of our government that approves our food that we eat, the medicine we take, basically anything that we consume, it goes through the FDA.
And so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They have now what?
They've approved a video game as a valid form of medical treatment, if I'm understanding what they're saying correctly.
They have approved a video game as a valid source of medical treatment? Okay, I'm just trying to repeat exactly what you said so people like me can understand. Anyway, continue.
It is weird. I saw this and I was like so confused. I was like, what?
So we hear about FDA-approved foods.
Right, yeah. FDA-approved games.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister, huh?
Yeah, right, yeah. It kind of
so
is.
what is this? What is this game exactly?
Well, the game itself is nothing special. It is a game made kind of specifically for this purpose. It's called Endeavor RX. And for those that may not be familiar, RX is kind of like the universal symbol notation for pharmacy medical care.
Sounds
RX.
familiar.
Yeah. If you see like a lot of stores, if they have a pharmacy, it'll be like Walgreens RX or something like that. Yeah. But anyway, the game's called Endeavor, and they basically said, hey, so we have a game now that we feel comfortable releasing to the masses as a valid treatment for ADHD.
What?
It'll be a free game. People can download on mobile.
Do we know exactly like the
Don't know many details. We know it'll be free, most likely. We know it'll be on mobile. We know that it's medically approved, so it's going to start being recommended. And we know that this is coming on the tail of a medical trial that they did, in which a third of the participants that they tested saw an increase in their cognitive attention span.
And correct me if I'm wrong here. Didn't we talk about many months ago as well that it's coming sometime in the future that it will be diagnosable to be, as you said, addicted to video games as did they call it a disease? It was.
I think they just stuck to addiction.
Okay,
they didn't lean to disease.
Didn't portray video games very well. So I'm just curious how because wouldn't any video game technically be a treatment for ADHD? I'm wondering how this one in particular treats ADHD.
I mean, if I could download it right now and like try it out, I was very curious. I went to the Play Store immediately. And
does
can I grab this?
Does it help with your ADHD, or is it just distracting you like any video game would? So
see, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if this is the FDA.
Are you
just
gonna walk away from this video game being like, I don't have it anymore?
I'm wondering if these are just old people. The FDA being like, these people were very attentive to this video game in general, and they were very interested in playing it, and maybe they were interested in other things afterwards as well. Who knows really? But I just find this fascinating that this is where we're at right now in society, where esports is finally getting accepted as a real sport. Video games are being accepted as medical treatments. Like, the industry is only growing, and I can't wait until the day that Call of Duty is being diagnosed as a treatment for that's going to be the stress reducer. Here's your medical homework, guys. Okay, they give you the prescription.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
Okay, I recommend that you play 3 games of domination.
And then and I want 2 games of deathmatch.
You must use SMGs because I know you've been having a rough time with them lately. I think it might be stress related because you're freaking out about the spray and everything.
Literally,
it might be affecting your performance in the rest of your life as well.
We're gonna have every game out there trying to vie for how they treat ADD and ADHD.
Right.
Gosh, we'll see what's next. Another progressive step forward, I guess, for video games.
Kind of halfway, I guess.
We'll see how this helps with ADHD.
It's a weird one, but it's a fun one too.
And next up, over the past week, if you guys forgot, this podcast is pre-recorded by 1 week, so I am a bit behind, but a bit of more of a prediction video we made on this, and certainly a talking point going forward is going to be life after Fortnite, Zan. You didn't see me slipping that one, did ya? Out of nowhere, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious about what direction you're taking this in.
Yeah, so we had a video this past week where shortly after we had a teaser for Season 3 coming to Fortnite, and then the eventual release, I believe a couple days later. We saw tons of streamers out there, of course, return to Fortnite. You know, Tim the Tatman, Cloaksy, Tfue dabbled here and there, amongst a lot of other names that are Fortnite creators or formerly Fortnite creators, dive back in for what might have been a couple of days, what might have been only a couple of hours for a lot of them, until they went back to Warzone. Obviously, the much rising battle royale out there. I think Warzone has done a lot of great things when it comes time for progressing BRs, just like Fortnite did in the prior 2 years. They both have done great things for BRs, slowly getting closer and closer to what we consider to be esports.
Absolutely.
In case people missed our video on this, I think it was actually about a month ago, Summit1G made some great points about why Battle Royales, many people do consider them to be esports because they have tournaments and prize pools, but for him at least, they're almost there. They're not quite there. They're making great moves forward as to what we want to see, but there's still so many issues when it comes time for Battle Royales being esports.
I 100% agree. I definitely don't think they're really esports ready.
In terms of competitive integrity, I think we've even had a lot of big names out there attached to organizations like TSM even come out and say, and a lot of pro players even openly admit, there is no competitive integrity when it comes to Battle Royales, right? There are so many ifs, ands, buts, RNG, and so they can't quite be esports. I like to think, though, we're making that step forward, and so I kind of touch on life after Fortnite as whatever game comes next, whatever game comes after Fortnite and after Warzone. Can there somehow be a good enough title to somehow get both those draws, right? And keep it going? But it also makes you think, I mean, I don't know. What we saw with Fortnite was groundbreaking.
Rare.
It was life-changing. It does not happen.
Once-in-a-lifetime experience right there.
Yeah. I mean, what it did, I could go off on this for so many tangents. But the same with Warzone, right? With Blackout being the first Call of Duty Battle Royale, I think largely by a lot of eyes out there, it flopped. I think it was underrated by the end of its lifetime, by the time Warzone came out. But Warzone itself right now is doing tremendous things. And so it makes you think, can there be something after both of these that draws in all of these names? Because we're seeing a definite rift between Fortnite Battle Royale players and Warzone Battle Royale players. And I'm just wondering, can there be a comeback for both of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Battle Royale has a huge future in gaming in general. I think there's a lot of unique avenues you could take this type of gameplay mechanic in. And I think it'll be fascinating when we finally feel a game developer is ready to release a Battle Royale game that people actually have to pay full price for. Because if you think about it, all these Battle Royales are free.
Yeah.
You know, and part of that is, of course, it's easier to get people involved if your game is free. I mean, that's the lowest barrier of entry possible. But at the end of the day, in my mind, that kind of speaks to they didn't feel confident that people would pay for it, you know?
And I think that's been a large part about why these kickstart so well, though. We saw Warzone really take off. We saw Fortnite really take off. Same could be said even for a game like Apex because no barrier to entry means everyone's there right away.
Which is hugely important. But I would love to see the first game like this that is like, you know, that is so strong, so good. I mean, heck, you look at a game like Cyberpunk, right? Nobody is questioning paying $60 for that game. Everybody's like, yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, I'll put that down immediately.
I think when it comes time for an esport, though, I think we're going away from that, and I think it probably a talking point for the future.
Large terms, I think free to play is probably the move. Yeah, but I do believe that I don't know how sustainable that is long term. You know, because these games are only getting bigger and better, and battle royales are only doing the same. I mean, Warzone has more players than we've seen previously,
and they're only selling more and more skins, though. You know, I think we'll save that talking point for the future. I guess for where I'm aiming for is, can we ever see a battle royale attuned to both what I am seeing as definitely an older demographic for Call of Duty Warzone? I think they would like to say that they're the more adult version.
I think that's fair. Yeah,
and I think we all are admitting that Fortnite's demographic is more of a kid and younger demographic. Not my words, okay? In the past week, we've had plenty of people. Myth in the past month has said this. Tfue has said this. Cloaksy has said they're trying to appeal more to that casual younger player base. So can we see a middle ground? And if we do, is that the next big thing after Fortnite and Warzone?
Destiny Battle Royale.
Shut the Okay. We're moving to the next one. What do you guys think?
All right, Jake. This is a little bit less fun of a story than the previous ones, unfortunately.
Man, take the smile off my face.
I would be doing a disservice to the fighting game community and my own love for the scene if I did not discuss the biggest news that we've seen in recent months. Filipino champ made an unfortunate tweet last week about Black Lives, or not necessarily about Black Lives Matter, but tangentially related. and as a result has been banned from several events, all of the big ones, by all of the big tournament organizers, as well as Capcom. Capcom themselves has said that a Filipino champ will be banned indefinitely from all of their events just going forward, right? And this is an interesting case in particular because Filipino champ, F-champ for short, has been a huge member of the fighting game community for years. He's a former EVO champion, EVO being the Super Bowl of the fighting game community, and he has just dominated in every game he's competed in. He's been in top 5, top 10, excellent member of the community. And he made this tweet last week that was him cutting a watermelon apart and saying, hashtag watermelon lives matter. Probably the worst possible time to make that joke. And as a result, he did get the punishment that, game developers and tournament organizers felt was fair. But I do think this is one of those wild instances where this is a player who has a clear record of saying some problematic things. Do you ever watch wrestling?
Rarely.
Okay, so in wrestling terms, he's what would be known as a heel or a villain character.
This is an interesting comparison. I'm from Iowa. It's a big wrestling state, Midwest.
Yeah, really? Yeah,
so
okay.
People are probably going to hate on me for that.
Okay. I picked the right subject to make a metaphor
right
off
in my alley.
Yeah, let's go.
It should
be. Next door to your alley, one block over. Yeah, but anyway, he's a heel where he acts like a bad guy a lot to kind of like Dr. Disrespect. That's the better comparison for esports. It's kind of like a persona in a way.
Yeah.
But he has said a lot of problematic things in the past.
It's unfortunate because last time we talked about FGC and bans,
it was, I believe that was Low Tier God and Ceroblast.
He who shall not be named. Can I don't know if you know right on the spot, how do those bans compare? Would you say these are along the same lines of at least what they did in terms of how wrong it was?
Part of the reason this is so important for the fighting game community is we don't really see bans like this very frequently.
Okay.
In other esports, you might see a couple bans like this every year, maybe like 5 to 10 minimum, right? Fighting game community, you only see 1 or 2 every few years, tops.
Was this more severe than what we previously talked about?
Absolutely not. This was just, he posted a picture of a watermelon.
Was his punishment more severe than the last one we talked about?
It's still kind of up in the air.
Okay, because it is indefinite, so we don't exactly know.
Yeah, exactly. And it was much more immediate. And I do think it was partially as a result of the current circumstances.
Rightfully so. And we've seen that across the board when it comes time for companies and esports orgs handing out punishments a lot faster given these circumstances.
Absolutely. And I do think this is one of those chances where Capcom saw what F-Champ said and was like, okay, we'll make an example of him because he hasn't really competed in recent years. He hasn't competed in a single actual tournament since 2018. Aside from invitational stuff, which that doesn't really count, And so him being banned from Capcom events doesn't really affect him. Him being banned from these other events from competing, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So I think this is a chance that the FGC community took to just be like, okay, we're going to send a message that we are supportive of all members of the community and we don't want to tolerate any negative statements. It was really unfortunate that it came to this guy in particular. I mean, I think he's been the most open in discussing his ban.
It's also really unfortunate he found this time to really think that through.
Which I did appreciate. He acknowledged that immediately. He took the tweet down, apologized immediately.
Did he? Okay.
He made an apology tweet, and then he put out a 3-hour-long Twitch stream just talking about it, apologizing, owning up to okay, here's what happened. I'm not making excuses. It was poor judgment on my part. I thought it was a funny joke. I thought that the people around me liked it, put it out to the public, realized it was bad, took it down, And he just asked for equality in those judgments going forward. He was realistically speaking, he said, I accept the punishment, and he's down with it. He's not trying to fight it at all. He just wants everybody in the community to be treated the same way, which I think is the way all communities need to proceed going forward.
Yeah, I guess based off what you've told me from his response, I haven't seen it personally. That's about as well as you probably can word it. You got to accept it. He took it down right away, has remorse for it, and hopefully things get corrected and people at least learn from this going forward, especially with the last time we talked about this. Every time someone has made an example like this, it's a learning experience for someone else who maybe in the future would have thought that would have been funny as well. So that's what I take from it. Hopefully people see this as an example to learn from and of course, build on their own character and build on their own decisions they would possibly make in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad he's taking this as a learning opportunity, being very positive about the whole thing, not being hateful towards any of the people who banned him from events or stuff, still friends with all of them. So, hopefully people learn from this. Hopefully the whole community takes this.
Exactly.
The esports community broadly.
And very lastly on this podcast, guys, Nicholas, our co-host here on the channel, made a video about this just this past week. That being Valorant. I know we say a lot of great things, maybe a lot of skeptical things about the future of this because it's going to be crazy to see how this does progress as an esport.
This is a rarity in esports. I don't think we've ever seen an esports game develop like this.
No, and I think Fortnite would be maybe a comparison, but even then, totally different because Fortnite itself came out of nowhere, didn't have this kind of hype behind it. So we're definitely seeing a lot of comparisons of, okay, did we build too high of expectations for a game like Valorant? Are teams over-investing or making great investments? It's going to be a crazy talking point. The topic for this one, though, being, has Valorant, is it esports right now? Is it entertainment? Did it rush too fast into esports, as Riot Games has actually now announced through Valorant their first official series of tournaments, which is going to be very fun to see.
Absolutely.
And speaking of seeing, though, you have to ask the question, are people actually watching? The teams being involved, if you want to give a few details as of right now for the Ignition series?
Yeah, we have very sparse details because, of course, this was just recently announced. So for now, we know that 20 different organizations are going to be involved, both esports as well as third party. Right now, we know G2 is going to be involved, hosting their own tournament series as part of the Riot Ignition series. We think T1 will likely,
TSM, I assume.
All the big names.
I assume any team that has, a big name in League of Legends that's also in Valorant.
I would assume that 100 Thieves has probably got something in the works.
Yeah, maybe a Gen G. We'll see. Cloud9, we'll see.
The most fascinating thing to me about this is the fact that Riot earlier announced that they weren't going to be hands-on involved with the tournament series, period, in the immediate future. And that was merely like a month or two ago. And it's wild to see a company walk this back so fast. And I have to wonder if this is in reaction to how so much of the community has been talking about, is Valorant really a watchable esport?
Yeah, and I think also it could be a misinterpretation. I think I took it the same way, though, as Riot wanted to be primarily way hands-off. This, to me, seems more than that. And maybe that's just us. But I think also from my side of things, what I see it as, we see a lot of these teams so far that maybe are going to be involved. They say 20 organizations. We maybe have a handful of full rosters from well-known organizations right now. And so from the ground up, we have Riot Games. At least they're doing this. But it does make you wonder, there's not going to be too much prize pools from what we've seen so far. I imagine 50 to 100K. And even then, what we've seen so far from G2, and I believe T1 slowly making these announcements, we're not even seeing fully signed teams competing. It's a lot of teams of creators and personalities.
Influencers.
Yeah.
I think just like in the first event that's happening, it's mainly influencers, right? Influencers and content creators.
For G2s?
Which
is very weird because G2, they have a speculated roster we've talked about, and they even have 2 different speculated players who we think are going to sign to their single Valorant roster competing on 2 different teams. I don't know. It's very, very weird.
It's weird.
And we don't exactly know how to react, so we'd love to gauge your guys' reaction as well. I do think I take from Nell from the Counter-Strike scene, in case you guys have not seen that. We've also seen several articles out there as well. As of right now, and maybe rightfully so, Valorant is entertainment because there's no really whole esports side of things right now.
Yeah, we're 100% right.
Besides the 200K Twitch Rivals event, we're not going to be seeing big money there. We're not going to be seeing big events with fully signed rosters, or at least that many of them, because they just aren't there quite yet. But I guess maybe to end on, we are seeing slowly gigantic organizations turn their eyes and actually reveal their gigantic investments. We've already talked about T1. We've already talked about TSM. G2 has now entered the door firmly as going to be
very strong.
That's what Ocelote, quote unquote, has now said, heavily investing. So, the hype is still there. Expectations are still there. When it comes time for tournaments and viewership, to me, it's not there yet.
I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated to see how this game does long-term, both as a game at the base level, as well as an esport. Because we've seen viewership numbers plummet across the board.
I think that's a fair way to put it.
Yeah, and, I don't think anybody really predicted it would be this severe a drop-off. People thought, like, oh, maybe a couple less people will be interested.
I just didn't know, to be honest.
Yeah.
And especially because we just talked about Fortnite's still doing well. Fortnite is still doing well, especially when they have big events. They get big viewership. Warzone's doing tremendous. And those are a little bit of a crossover here and there, especially when it comes time for streamers and people who bring big viewers. We've seen the Summits and the Dr. Disrespects and the Nadeshots and the Tifus go away from Valorant already.
They've all fallen off. And that's kind of been the fascinating part of all this to me. Like, I've had access to Valorant for quite a while. I've had it installed on my machine several times.
Yeah.
I've yet to boot it up once because who cares? Because, there's so many great video games out there.
Yeah.
So many competitive video games. like it's just hard to slot Valorant in there when like it's just CSGO with a shiny coat of paint.
I'll bring one last point into it. Slasher on Twitter brought a great point about, is anyone watching these tournaments because they are 50K, maybe 100K events with not even teams that you don't have a team you can cheer for because those rosters are not complete yet. Is anyone watching this game? I've watched a few grand finals here and there just to see how the good rosters that make it to grand finals that are complete do. I'm not going to watch open qualifiers of these mixed teams that aren't signed yet.
Yeah, that's more than fair. Like, yeah, it's like I think I'd only watch grand finals, not even quarters, not semis. I think right now it's hard to justify.
And
like,
especially because it's like we got a handful of maps, 4 maps out.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know.
Very few maps, very few characters. Matches take a good minute.
Yes.
If you want to sit down and watch a Valorant game, that's a time investment.
And then, do you get excited watching it? We're gonna keep you guys posted how it develops right now. To me, Valorant is entertainment. Even then, maybe struggling to entertain out there as well. Valorant Esports is still developing. Riot is now hands-on a bit more than we thought. We will see what comes next. As per usual, we hope you guys enjoyed the Esports Rewind podcast. You guys are awesome. This week definitely puts us in a funk. It's just been so busy. But we always appreciate you guys watching or listening. Zan, hit him with that fat outro.
Okay, guys. Okay. As per usual, okay, guys, thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it, actually. Thank you so much. For everybody out there who might want to watch or listen to the Esports Rewind on their phone, on the go, in their car, on their favorite podcast platform of choice, you can find us as part of the Prediction Esports Talk Show Network. That's PREEDICTION. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and probably just about everywhere else. So by all means, if you want to check it out, download it. That does help support us. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our audio listeners as well. We appreciate y'all tuning in. Thanks for joining us. We have daily esports news content you can find at Esports Talk on YouTube, as well as esportstalk.com. If anybody ever wants to reach out, say hey, send a kind word, share a story, potential just discussion point, whatever, reach out to us in the comments down below, on Twitter at talk_esports, at Instagram at esports_talk. We're always listening, reading every single thing, even though unfortunately we're all busy and sleep deprived, so we don't have time to respond to every single thing, but we read literally everything. So thank you all for reaching out. Thank you for all the kind words recently and particularly. Jake, do you have anything you would like to leave them with?
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys back here same time, same day, every single week with Esports Rewind Wild West. See you guys.